The challenge and the problem sometimes is that we're all, well, it's a challenge, it's a good search, but we're all trying to figure out what God is like. Even if you've been a Christian for a long, long time, you still ask that question, what is God really like? And on this Father's Day, I'm just mindful that we often make God in the image of our fathers or our mothers. And for those of you who are blessed with having good role models, that's great. A lot of wonderful characteristics about God that you caught from your parents. But many people, it's a different story. And the negative and distorted images they have of God as a result of their parents. And we know that God isn't a super being out there in the sky somewhere, but it's our human nature to make God into the image of kind of a super person, So I'm mindful of this passage in John 14, verses 1 through 8, where one of Jesus' disciples named Philip comes up to him and says to Jesus, "Show us the Father. Show us what God is really like." And I'm wondering if you've ever asked yourself that question, because Philip is worried and he's wondering, and he's saying to Jesus, show me what God is really like so I don't have to worry and I don't have to wonder anymore. So what will Jesus say, and how will Jesus respond to him? And there's this unbelievable response to Jesus. He says, "Whoever has seen me has seen the Father." Wow. Now, do you and I believe that? Do you believe that if you want to see God, all you have to do is look at Jesus? Many of us believe that, and many of us don't. You see, we want to, and we think, of course, that Jesus is kind and compassionate, the characteristics of a super parent or a super friend, the kind of God we wish we had in our lives. But what about God? I mean, really? God is kind of different, we think. And we think that God can be kind sometimes, but maybe other times he's mean. It's like that Greek god in Greek mythology, the god Janus, that has two faces. And it was used for actors in the theater. But the one face is smiling and happy and loving and kind. And the other face seems to be frowning and a bit angry and a bit scary. So I think it's important to know as we reflect and ponder, God doesn't have two faces. God has one face. And at least in the Christian tradition, if you want to know what God is like, look at Jesus. Look in the face of Jesus. Look at his life. Look at his love demonstrated in his life through the cross, through the resurrection. So how do we apply this? Well, here's one simple application for your anxiety, for your fear, maybe, of God. We don't have to wonder, we don't have to worry anymore about a God that loves us beyond our comprehension. And look at the characteristics of Jesus: loving, tender, compassion, fierce in love, to knock out anything in our minds and hearts and lives that we would think that God doesn't love us. And we see God through and by looking at the personal face of Jesus. And one last application, I think, is later on in this passage, Jesus says, you're going to do greater works than I've done. There's so much baggage that has been placed on Jesus by the church and by Christianity. And Jesus is saying, you'll do greater works than I've done, as we get back to the revolutionary, radical way of Jesus, which is beyond belief, beyond behavior, to the spirit of love and to living out the way of love in our lives, so that when people look at you and me, they will say they've seen God. Oh, I have a ways to go, and I'm sure you do too, but we're on that journey. And God, help us to know without a doubt that you love us and to live out this radical, revolutionary way of love in our lives so that when people look at us, they say, I've seen Jesus and I've seen God through him and through her. So until next time, may you live all the days of your life.